All right, I'd like to call this January 10th, 2023 Polk County Board of Commissioners meeting to order at 9:01 a.m. Please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Are there any comments not on this agenda? Hearing none, do I have a motion to approve the minutes of January 3rd?
Also move. Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Next up is an update from Director Whitaker. Please join us.
Morning, Commissioners.
Morning. Morning.
So try to do a brief update on Public Works. Later on, when we're going through budget, I'll have a full annual update. I'll have some more information on it, but these are kind of the highlights. We want to look at 2022. I've provided some handouts there with some numbers on them because engineers like numbers. Tons of rock purchased, 28,857. Road miles chip sealed was just over 32. Miles of center line striping was 156 and fog line striping was 125, which is a little normal or a little lower than we would normally do, but we had some issues with the availability of paint and not being able to get adequate quantities of it. There's some other numbers there. Service requests we completed 196, over 1,000 over dimension permits issued, 92 access permit applications reviewed, 215 working right-of-way permits issued, 88 private maintenance agreements, 7 special events, 2 adopt a road events, 86 dust control permits, 110 surveys reviewed, 17 partition plats filed, 9 subdivision plats filed, and 76 corner restorations. So it was a busy year, and it looks like a lot of that stuff is going to transfer forward for the next year.
God, what are some of the outliers in terms of volume for 2022 in terms of high volume? You say it's a busy year. Just curious what stands out to you.
I don't have that.
Yeah,
I don't have that off the top of my head, but
right.
that is something that I'll try to get at like a 5-year.
I'm just curious.
No, it would be meaningful. What's our 5-year average in those numbers?
Yep.
You know, I know that subdivision plats, you know, for the past few years have been high. And then, you know, then you realize that's kind of the preliminary wave that you see. And then in the next year or two, then the subdivision plans come in. So one is work for the surveyor, and then that becomes work for the engineering staff.
Sure.
So our facility improvements are mostly done out at Public Works. There's a couple of little things that are getting fixed. I think we have some lighting control panels and some smarts and parts that haven't arrived yet. And then we're still waiting on an auxiliary generator for the facility. That generators have been delayed. The last I heard is that it would be available in February of this year. So keep our fingers crossed there. Looking forward, this summer we've got construction starting on the flat project out on Black Rock Mitchell. The work that'll happen this year is going to be fairly minor. It's just going to involve some free falling because of the federal requirements. They have to do the tree falling during a particular window of time when there's no birds nesting in it. And so that'll happen this year. And then the rest of the stuff will happen next year. Arts projects, we have 2 of them that we'll do this year. One of them is improved signage and striping. And that's on some select roads that were identified as having some higher than normal systemic crash rates. And on those roads, we'll be adding centerline striping that has improved visibility in wet weather. and also re-signing all of the curve warning signs per the new requirements. The other arts project we have is out at Riddle Road and Clow Road, and that'll be the through route activated warning system that goes in there. We originally planned that for last year, but like everything else, the parts don't show up and they can't tell you when they're going to show up. So we've just been getting them piece by piece by piece when they come in. So hopefully we'll get all those this year and they'll come in. We placed the order a year and a half ago. It's just supply chain stuff. We've got our safe routes to school project. That one is on schedule for bidding this spring. Pending right-of-way acquisition and utility relocations, which I don't see any problems there, with the exception of utility relocations. There's some pretty large power utility there, and I know that it's going to be very costly for them to relocate that power utility. And the way the franchise agreements read with the City of Independence is they don't pay for the relocation. And so, that's been a problem with power companies. Recently, we experienced one on both Mitchell and Oakdale, where the power companies just said, yeah, we have to move them, but there's no schedule for moving them. And so caused some significant delays to one of those projects, which cost us some considerable money with that. So that's one potential that I could see for, a hurdle. Obviously, the other one is right of way, but no major flags there yet. And then Grand Ron Road North reconstruction. That road continues to degrade at a pretty high rate. I think we're putting down about 6 to 10 bags of coal patch a week on that now, just because the alligator pieces are coming up and we're trying to keep it patched up and going. So that one really needs to happen this year. The design is on track for bidding this spring, but we still need to get memorandums of agreement signed, intergovernmental agreements with the tribe in Yamhill County, and get all that stuff straightened out before we can, proceed forward with confidence. Got some other stuff that's listed down here at the bottom. Obviously, we'll do some approach and patch paving projects this year. Some of these ones aren't really on the in this list down below, aren't on the 2023 list. Some of them are, supporting Buena Vista Park Phase 2. There'll be some downgrades and vacations. Some equipment replacement purchases. We're starting to find out on equipment, like any pickups are telling us now to order them a year in advance. So that kind of makes it hard for planning with budgetary purposes and stuff like that. So, and then the third page is our state coordinated projects. We've got the Oaks Ferry to Riggs, which is, there's 3 projects that are combined into one, that whole corridor safety improvement program in there. Our flat project I already mentioned. We've got the roundabout project, which is supposed to get started towards the end of the year with some more minor work. We've got the Fort Hill to AR Ford Road project out in Grand Ron. They've acquired enough money to push the design of Highway 1822, to the design acceptance phase on that project for out to Kissing Rock. They don't have the money to construct, and so one thought is to look at that project as a potential for another federal grant. I know that there's some that we're eligible for that are coming up that have some deadlines in the next month or two. And so that may be one that we have a discussion with ODOT for. Let's talk about grants in general for just a little bit. There's a lot of money that came out of the infrastructure bill, but a lot of it is federal grants. And so with the federal grants becomes federal requirements, and with ODOT going down the path of doing fund exchange less. So they say they're running out of state dollars. And so they can't they can't participate in the programs of state funded local delivered projects as much as they have been. And so the availability for us to deliver those projects evaporates. And so then we're left with, okay, well, ODOT deliver the project. Well, ODOT can't deliver the projects on their own state highway system. So I don't forecast that they're going to be very interested in developing projects on our county road system. And so that really means a loss of opportunity in some of these projects. We've got some really, I think, great projects that we could apply for, but I have no hope of being able to deliver them. We can't get certified. Well, we technically we can get certified, but realistically, it's not likely we'll be certified as a local public agency.
And you still have to manage the project like a federal project anyway.
Correct. But in my opinion, that's doable and similar to
It's not saving any money.
it costs you more. It surely costs you more. Similar to the right-of-way process. When we acquire right-of-way, if it's for our own county road system, our county road surveyor goes and talks to the property owner and they negotiate a price and it gets done and it's a month and it's done. If it's federally funded, then it's 6 months to a year, and you can't use your county surveyor or another surveyor. They got to be a federal right-of-way acquisition specialist to go through that and do that. By the same token, they could say, well, we've got people that are certified to get right-of-way. Why can't we have people certified, private companies that are certified to do the project administration portion that ODOT does for federally funded projects and outsource that? So, I don't know that ODOT's not interested in doing that. I just haven't heard any discussion that they are. But now would be the time to find that out while we have grants that we could apply for. So there's the grant spiel. Some of these other projects, let's see, Rick Railroad to Dokes Ferry, that's a combination of some of these ones up above. I need to consolidate this list a little bit. And then we've got the roundabout project that ODOT's doing out at Highway 223 and Highway 22. And then out in Grand Ronde, I think they're doing a pedestrian enhancement project right there at the intersection of Salmon River Highway and Grand Ronde Road North. Equipment wise, we've got a couple of vehicle purchases that we need to make. One will be another de-icing rig, because our contractor who was providing de-icing is no longer providing that service. So we're going to provide it ourselves in the upcoming years. We've already got one rig to do it. It works great, but it just can't cover the whole county. And what we're trying to do is set those up as modular units. So we have a skid mounted de-icing unit that sits on the flatbed, straps down. When we're done with that, it comes off. And when we're in culvert installations or something, we have another skid that will set up on there and make that piece of equipment more useful. Equipment, we're still looking for mowers and keeping the mowers that we have patched up with bubble gum and baling wire. But that's our next challenge, is to settle in on a mower that we have some confidence with, and we just haven't gotten there. Well, that's all I have for now. Are there any questions?
New sanding truck here now?
Pardon me?
You get your new sanding truck in?
No new sand. You mean our water truck?
Maybe it's a water truck.
Yeah, we haven't got it in. It's sitting over in Prineville. We're just waiting for a forecast that doesn't have. I don't want to put a $250,000 vehicle in the ditch on the way home. So we're waiting for a good forecast for that, but it is complete and ready to pick up.
So just for your benefit and for the record, interesting exchanges yesterday in AOC Transportation Legislative Committee and then eventually board meeting regarding STBG, the Funds Exchange Program for those people listening, and the arguments that we've had. So we had the Dog and Pony Show from Travis Brower yesterday, again, on the fund exchange and the woes of ODOT and how they can't maintain O&M and without doing this. I think the bottom line in that, again, I've heard it before from him, is that regardless of whether we all agree to go with the new modified rate and modified program, they can still withdraw it anytime they want.
Correct.
And it sounds likely that they're going to modify it to nothing because they have no plan for how to improve their O&M budget. No plan. So there's nothing in the works. Of course, you know about House Bill 2101. I hope.
I don't.
Okay, so that is a OASIS and AOC partnered bill that has been written and is being carried by Representative Marsh to codify the fund
I have
into law.
I wasn't familiar with the number.
So we had quite a robust debate yesterday in the board meeting about whether to sign the IGA in its modified form for the fund exchange. And a little bit of pressure was put on us by Brian Worley to maybe we need to just consider it because LOC has already agreed to it. So there was quite a debate about whether or not this thing made any sense at all to sign or whether we're just acquiescing to yes for nothing. The room was pretty split on whether or not yes was the right, yes to the current IGA with modifications is the right way versus hold tight and wait to see how we do in 2101. I pressed and was successful to say, well, first and foremost, I said, I want both. I want the STBG to be intact in its current form. I don't want to give up anything. And I want it codified in state law. To which several people went, oh, that's bold. It's like, well, why not? I mean, we are the counties. We are the lion's share of this money. And as far as partnership is concerned, so yeah, I want it all. But that said, since OASIS has worked on this bill, generally your peers are saying, I don't know that it's unanimous, but I think generally your peers are saying, don't sign that IGA. They said 70% of your peers.
I haven't heard the outcome. I know that they did a survey. I provided input for Polk County, and my input was you haven't provided us with enough information for us to say yes or no. And so one of the big questions in there, and that just went, it's gone, is on the bridge funding. So what they're saying is that we're gonna cut back your fund exchange for
Road
maintenance, unless it's bridge. If it's bridge maintenance, then we've got money through HB 2017 that provides, local funds to be able to exchange for your bridge funding. So there's no limit on your bridge maintenance. What do you call them bridge maintenance? They haven't defined what they're calling bridge maintenance. And so is that only going to be, this type of a repair? Is it only going to be repairs? Is it going to be cleaning? Is it going to be, anything else? There's some other questions that I put to them. It's like, you need to answer these questions of what ODOT is going to consider here. It's because they get to make the rules. And so far their rules haven't worked out real good for us all the time.
Right. And if their anticipation is that it's just building a bridge, then what we get is irrelevant.
Right. And so I said, we can't answer one way or the other. And then, oh gosh, I wish I could remember the other questions that I had for them. They escape me right now, but some of them would lead you to say, go ahead and accept it. Some of them would lead you to say, no, don't. So.
So the outcome of the board of directors vote yesterday was to send it back to transportation committee. And because that's our new policy now, we don't thumbs down anything at ledge or board. Well, we could have at the board, but we don't. If we need to just suspend it while staff continues to work on it. Brian Worley did say, well, look, we've been working on this for 2+ years. And I said, but you're at the threshold of a long session with a bill to codify what you want. Don't poke them in the eye. Just tell them it's still under review. We're not going to say no. We're not going to say yes. I mean, I think it's really like you are stating. We don't have enough information.
I can't. Yeah.
And my concern is if we acquiesce to yes in this current form, it's telling the legislators we can live with less. We can't. That's the facts. We can't live with less.
Well, in this case, for Polk County, yes is more.
Yeah, I do get that.
Yeah.
But in the big picture, long haul, it's not more. And
If they can, if
for
they
the state of
continue eroding-
Oregon, it is not good.
Right.
And Polk County will get what we get eventually, even if we say yes to what is clearly more today. So anyway, I just wanted to put that on the record and let you know what the actions were at the board meeting. We're not,
So what were those actions?
we are not voting to, we did not vote to support the IGA, even though AOC Rhodes recommended we say yes to it. So we did not. It was an interesting thing because, again, policy advisor in the group said we should say yes to it, but then argued against it because Chris Doty said, we're not okay with this. We think you should say no. We want to say no at Oasis. So we're not saying no, we're just not saying yes. And we're going to continue to work the problem. We want to have opportunity to be able to talk with legislators and let them know our perspective. And so Chris and others are going to be working that very issue with legislators about why they should codify what we're doing in law.
So I don't recall what their deadline is, but I think it was still in the future. It might have been this week or it might have been next week, is a deadline for people to respond to the survey on whether we should accept or deny. And so I'm kind of surprised that they either didn't set that deadline earlier prior to this AOC meeting, or at the AOC meeting say, we don't have the results of our survey yet, because I haven't seen the results of the survey. So I'll ask them.
Well, I think the results matter, but they don't matter enough to be able to, this is my take on it. They don't matter enough to be able to send a message to legislators that we're ready to move forward with the IGA. We're not. So the board of directors for AOC has to say yes to it first. And that's not happening. So that's where we're at. We've directed policy advisors, all of them, to work this bill and work with these legislators over the flaws of 2017, for example. House Bill 2017 should have been cognizant of the O&M side of what they were predicting. And again, to Travis Brower's statement yesterday, he said, you know, we're not in great shape with the build it side, but we're in pretty good shape. We're in horrible shape on the fix it side. Well, that's a state issue and it's a state management problem. And the state legislature should step in and do their job and fix it. But instead, they're dumping it on us, essentially robbing us a very small piggy bank.
Yeah.
They can't fix this problem with what they're taking.
They're taking our piggy bank because they need to buy a house.
Yeah. Yes. Very good.
Probably take wherever they can. This is one.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's really a drop in the bucket. I mean, I think aren't they 400 million short? And this is 20 of it.
One of the biggest frustrations I had is we just got that $400 million flexible funds out of the IJA that came through. And then they sent out a survey to everybody asking what percentages should we put this money into? How much to fix it? How much to roads? How much to pedestrian bicycle? And so we voted, and then we have it set. Now it's all in how that money is going to be spent. And then they come out and say, we don't have the money for maintenance or fix it. Well, why didn't you give us that piece spiel before we voted on this $400 million of flexible funding? And then even there, I could have blew him up yesterday because I contacted you. They said their fixed income has not raised for the last 20 years. So we get our share of our property, our gas tax, and it's gone from 2.5 million in 2002 to 6.8 million in 2022. So we've gone up almost threefold, just shy of it. The state's done the same thing. So that stayed up with cost of living, the inflation. So they still have the money for the fix it. I want to know what they've done with that money that they're getting, because,
They're on a debt service loan.
okay, well,
I mean, that's the facts. They've spent it, they are upside down. I mean, worse than broke on debt service. And so that's the challenge that they have. I've seen their charts, their debt service, and that's why Travis's chart yesterday shows on the current trajectory going to $700 million in the red. Well, they can't by law. The Oregon Highway Fund can't legally do that. So that's the problem. They're spending so much money on debt service because they over bonded too many projects. So, and they've robbed from O&M to do that.
and they're still offering.
And they're
bonds.
holding the House Bill 2017 money to build new projects in advance to that. That's in a separate fund. So they don't have to use those 2017 dollars for debt service. That's why they're so healthy on the build it side. But in operations and maintenance, they are drowning in debt because of their debt service.
This is a statutory requirement for O&M obligations before you go up.
Yeah.
and Go for more debt. I don't know what the solution.
Lay off 500 people.
Yeah. And that was one of the questions presented to him yesterday. You've laid off,
But I'll settle for
you've
500.
laid 500 maintenance people off. How many front office people have you laid off? In
Don't-
conjunction?
But
He didn't answer that question.
No.
don't lay
Those
off
conversations
maintenance
don't have to
people,
work.
lay off.
But that is exactly where they're going.
planners,
He said
environmentalists.
15% cuts across the board on maintenance, which means, and he touched on snowplows, for example.
Yep.
And that there are gonna be less plowing efforts on all highways. So I never heard, and I was a little stunned, I'm editorializing, I apologize, but I was a little stunned that I didn't hear from anybody on the east side of Cascades in that meeting. Nobody
They thought the
objected.
same thing.
And it's like, listen carefully, he's telling you that your citizens will be snowed in. They're not getting on these highways. No plows, no transportation. That's just one of many of the issues. Again, I dealt specifically with weed abatement issues all summer and the mowing. And I'm confident the mowing will stop. And we'll see a lot more of that challenge going forward. But that is done. That's a done deal. They're making those cuts in maintenance. So anyway, all I'm going to with this is as we go forward and with your highlights, is to be thinking about, okay, well, we see what's coming for the state. We see what's likely coming for this STBG fund, and the possibilities that it could just get yanked out from under us. So what is our plan B to manage our needs for maintenance? How do we reprioritize? I know you don't have an answer to that, but I'm just suggesting we should be anticipating a different angle to do our job, because taking their line of, well, we'll just stop doing O&M or stop doing maintenance in Polk County isn't a solution.
Yeah, so I've got some answers to that. There's two different ways that we use those funds that are now drying up. One is our annual fund exchange, which is the STBG thing. The other one is the state-funded local delivered projects. And I think that program has only been here for 5 years, and our participation in it is quite limited. And I think that we will continue to be able to participate in that SFLP program to the extent that we're using that on bridge projects. They've indicated that bridges are still receiving good funds. But our projects that are SFLP include our signage and striping improvements,
You should probably define that acronym for the record,
the
SFLP.
state-funded local, they call it state-funded local program. Yeah, I thought you'd said that a couple times, but that's the signing striping enhancements and the arts project at Riddle Cloud. So all those arts projects have been SFLP. And so those would now need to be delivered by ODOT. And I don't know what willpower they're going to have for doing that. I don't know. I don't know that they won't. I haven't talked to anybody there to gauge that. So from the maintenance standpoint with, our pavement management, I don't see it being an impact. Bridge replacement and maintenance, I don't necessarily see it being an impact just because of their statements about bridge funding. But safety improvements, that's where I could see it having an impact.
And when he was asked specifically, Brower was asked specifically about that yesterday, he pointed to arts. And said that's the methodology that'll be used in the future for safety projects.
But if it's federal funds and they're not going to exchange those, who's going to do them?
Great point.
Do you know how many counties are certified?
I think there are 3. I think it's Multnomah, Lynn. Is Lane one?
I looked at that.
Yeah. And so that's a thought I've had that I also want to talk to Lynn County about, because we've always had a good partner relationship with them, is will they deliver a federally funded project for us? Do they have the bandwidth to act in that capacity for us? So, that's a possibility. There's also, maybe some possibilities where we could do our own fund exchange county to county.
That was discussed at board level yesterday.
And I've had a little bit of conversation with Chris Doty about that. He thinks that that's possible, but obviously the devil's in the details there. And the other thing is, as ODOT's incentive, the ODOT should be incredibly incentivized if the situation is what they say. They should be incredibly incentivized on getting local public agencies certified. And so they have an agreement with FHWA where they said, this is how we're going to certify public agencies. And it's very rigorous and very difficult. And that's why there's not very many local public agencies certified. You cross the river to Washington, every county is a certified local public agency.
All right.
Are they smarter than us? Are they more capable than us? But because they're because they're a sales tax state, do they have, just massively more employees that can deliver that? I don't know. What's the difference between those two agreements? It'd be nice to know. Has ODOT dotted every I twice and crossed every T twice to make that very rigorous to do? I know that we started down the path one time of working on getting some certification. We sent our project engineer to ODOT's class for wetland delineation. We paid the tuition. She took the class. She aced the test, and they denied her certification because she lacked enough education to do wetland delineation, even though she passed her test. Master's degree in water resource engineering.
That's a minimum requirement.
No, that was her resume.
So what did they point to? Is it
Not enough biological classes.
in her coursework?
Yes.
That's
So that told me they had no incentive to give us federal certification. We stopped the effort at that,
But in
that point in time.
in the past, on exchange, they made money off of.
Correct.
If they're going to get away from that, then they may be more incentivized, certified, because it's no longer a cash cow for them.
It costs them money, they're saying,
To what?
to exchange.
Well, they don't have the ability to deliver projects. That's what's causing the issue. They're taking all our federal money, giving us 90 cents on the dollar.
Correct. All these grant programs are out there to be easily spent on the state highway system. And so they're swamped. And so what incentive do they have to say, yeah, sure, we'll take on we'll sign on to that grant for you guys. It's improving the county road system. We'd be happy to do that. I mean, I don't want to totally throw them under the bus because honestly, I haven't asked and I need to do that, but
I guess that's where I'm at right now. I'm suggesting that it's time that we start looking at other alternatives here, start anticipating what can we do, especially in partnerships with other counties. There was quite a lot of conversation yesterday amongst commissioners about coalition. So I think we're going to step into your Oasis business a lot more than we have because, well, the specter has been raised to do so. And I think that we're all asking you and asking each other the questions about what does the law allow us to do? It's time. When you have an agency that's as dictatorial as ODOT is, standing in front of county commissioners and judges yesterday saying, we want you to sign this agreement, but do keep in mind, we're not making any promises. That is not a collaborative or cooperative relationship. And it's time for us as a governing body to say, okay, well, what's our alternatives? Because we can't play the same game that the state is playing here. We can't. And I mean, again, you and I, all of us are watching other counties around us that seem to be doing that. I find that extremely irresponsible. And I want to make certain that we're pushing every button we have available to us that the law allows us to use. And it will be more work, no question about it. But if we don't do that, well, I guarantee there'll be less work. So I think it's time for us to ask these questions about what can we do with the dollars we currently have and how can we partner better?
the appearance of it isn't good from ODOT's standpoint.
Right.
In my mind, you've got all of this infrastructure money that's out there that's available to be spent. And you've told, and these are competitive grants, every one of them is a competitive grant. And so you told these people you're eliminated from the competition. It's like, well, you can provide it for us. So yeah, well, we don't want to. We're busy enough with our own stuff. And so you've eliminated a lot of competition for those grants. And that's not, I don't think that's a good image for them.
So to get certified, do they certify your engineer, your staff, or do they certify your agents?
The process, the whole agency.
So if that engineer that went over and passed that test happens to leave, do you lose your certification because that person left?
Probably, yes. If your agency certification requires that you have on staff somebody who is competent to have these credentials and you lose that person, then you've lost your certification.
Or you probably have 6 months or a year to replace that.
Now you can, I don't think that they're gonna get that specific. I don't think that they're gonna say you have to have somebody on staff with this certification. I need to go look at that, but you have to be able to check that, you have to be able to meet that some way. You can meet it with an outside consultant for somebody to do that work or with somebody in-house. So I don't think they would say, here's the people you have to have on staff. I think the federal requirements are gonna say, you have to follow these accounting rules. You have to follow these records, documentation. These things are what they're gonna wanna see to make sure that all the money was accounted for, that it got spent where it was supposed to get spent.
Much bigger workload.
Yeah.
A lot more staff needs.
Yeah, I mean, if you assume that, if you look at it optimistically and say, well, all that stuff was necessary because the federal requirements necessitated all of that. Then, you look at these two projects that we had 10 years ago. One was an OTIA project, one was HBR, now a local bridge program project. And the OTIA, which is Oregon Transportation Investment and Infrastructure Act, something like that. Those were local funds. They gave those funds to us and we went and built a bridge. And the contract was, I think, $380,000. I believe that included the engineering for new bridge. Local bridge program, same size bridge, a little bit different configuration on the, that one was a foundation supported bridge. The other one was a pile supported bridge. Both of them had bypass bridges. Both of them were the same dimensions, but essentially the same. This federal funded bridge had a lot less asphalt associated with it than this bridge over here did. This one was $1 million. But the construction cost was almost identical. And so it's just paper, and process. that spent that. And if all of that's necessary and it doesn't matter who does it, you're still gonna spend that much, then that could be the kind of additional costs that we're looking for. That's not that kind of order of magnitude increase is not what I'm hearing everybody else is experiencing. But I think people are trying to get a handle on that of how much would it cost, how much additional would it cost if we spent these federal dollars instead of exchanging them?
Is there a percentage of the federal grants for administrative
Pardon me?
services? Is there a percentage you can use of that grant for administrative services? Can you take,
Yeah. Yeah, I believe that your staff cost would be covered with that. I mean, when on the local bridge program, those all get outsourced to ODOT. So ODOT's always delivered those for us. So we haven't, the closest we come to delivering federally funded projects is when we have a FEMA disaster or, we almost delivered the flat project, but then Western Federal Lands wanted that back. So we don't really deliver federally funded projects. So I can't say that I know what's eligible and what's not.
Anything else?
Want to talk about elk?
Yeah.
Really.
So we've had some recent complaints about elk populations in the Airlie Elkins Road area down in that southwestern portion of our county. In December, there was a accident out there, vehicle versus an elk. And then I'm not positive, but I received some photos yesterday of a dead elk next to the road that there's no explanation with it. I'm assuming that it was a recent elk strike. The complainant wants us to put up elk crossing signs, and we've got a pretty large area out there that this Soap Creek herd has moved into. It's, I think, split up into 2 or 3 different herds. We're talking hundreds of elk in each one of these herds. They're very large, and I blame it on the fact that I left Airlie. Otherwise,
Blame it on that too.
yeah, they'd be rural shortage if I'd stayed there. But so they want us to put in these elk crossing signs, but the information that I have from I think this was it was an insurance institute on highway traffic safety. Says there's no evidence that those elk crossing signs work. They say that the research to prove whether those signs are not elk, they were talking deer, but the research to prove whether those signs work or not probably hasn't been done because the funding agencies won't fund something that they obviously know doesn't work. And so nobody will fund research to see whether they work or not. But the general information out there, if you look at it, says they're not highly effective, nor is general education or speed reductions. And so people just don't. And a case in point, one of the accidents I'm aware of, the person lives on Elkins Road. The elk were there. It's been a growing problem for 5 years and still hit one and wrecked a car. So it's like, well, the awareness was there, but something else, needed to happen in order for that to stop. So signs, having said that, signs are not expensive. They're easy to put up. I'm not sure that they're going to accomplish a whole lot, but in order to do this correctly, it would take as many as 16 signs to handle this entire area where they're needed. And a couple $100 a sign, $200 to $250 a sign, you're talking $3,000 or $4,000. We could reduce that cost somewhat, maybe with a different sign. So for example, let's say you're driving in on Maxfield Creek Road, it just says entering elk area. Otherwise, what we would do is down at the intersection of Maxfield Creek and Airlie, then we'd have 2 signs on Airlie Road that said elk crossing. So that it doesn't matter where you come into the area, you get notified.
I can't think of, honestly, I'm being cynical here. I can't think of how far back you're gonna put that sign on either the entry to Maxfield Creek Road, which is, I don't know.
County line.
Okay, yeah, the county line.
Yep.
And hopefully the other counties reciprocate, or at the other end of Airlie Road at 99W, which is also an outcrossing
Right.
area. I mean, it's like, you can't do that. You can't cover it.
So to take Maple Grove, I would put it at Highway 223. I would say, Elk and roadway, whatever, next so many miles, that takes you up to the intersection. Well, now you get to the intersection, if you've seen that sign and go, okay, I'm done, I'm out of it. Now you got to tell them again.
Then you speed it back up to 80.
Right. And so,
I'll just tell y'all, I think that would be an exercise of futility. I think it's a silly thing to do. And again, I'm being tongue in cheek here with there might be some people out there expect we're going to enforce the L to cross where their crossing signs are. So I've heard these jokes, but the fact of the matter is we could do much better with using these resources, time, money, etc., pushing ODF and W to do their job.
there you go.
That is where the challenge is here. ODF and W, I've been working on this for years. ODF and W has not done what they should be doing to break these herds up so that they are not, or issuing enough permits, hunting permits, in order to make certain that they cannot grow to herds this big. We have economic damages here in this county that are phenomenal because of these herds.
Well, part of the problem is the landowners too. So ODFW has a program that anybody can go and get a Willamette unit cow tag that lasts from August 1st to March 31st. Nobody has a season that long, but it's 1% public lands, and try to get permission on those private lands that are suffering the damage, and you can't get it. And so part of that is, landowner education and, something like that, say, hey, how do we make you guys feel more comfortable that people aren't going to come in and cause problems to your land or damage it worse than the elk would, something like that. But to actually take advantage of that program, those aren't controlled applications that hunters are putting in for. It's an over the counter that they will sell. Anybody can come and do it, but it's not getting utilized because people can't get access to the land. And so,
It would take a pretty broad buy-in.
yeah,
To actually make a dent.
yeah. But you go there and you see it, it's pretty substantial when a herd of 200 elk runs through a ryegrass field at this time of year.
Well, I was talking to one of the farmers. He says, okay, I see the damage the elk can run through my field, but how much damage are you gonna do to my field getting out to the middle of it where that elk is laying?
Right.
He says, so how do you get it out of there without
That's what
totally
I think.
destroying my
Yep.
property?
Because I've had it
Yeah.
happen multiple times, where I say, yes, you may, and then I find their vehicle buried up to the door sill
Right.
in the middle of the field. It's like,
But you've got that, it starts August 1st. You've got a
And give
time-
forest
you've
that
got a
training.
time period from August 1st till, mid-October, when, that land is fairly solid, that you could do something. So, I mean, I think it's one of the complainants was, mentioning, if we don't do something, they're gonna go to the newspapers, and I've got a draft email. I'm gonna encourage them to do so. Because actually public awareness of this might be better than the signs.
There's a story, Dave.
I agree.
Yeah.
Public awareness is the key.
Yeah.
Need to get people to slow down and be aware that you're
And
driving in herd zones.
I will make sure that we do something on our PCPW webpage, because it's a pretty hot item in the public.
Well, fortunately, it sounds like we haven't had a substantial injury or death by elk,
Yeah,
but we know that they're capable of it. They're as big as horse.
Yeah.
So we know that striking horses can be fatal.
Mhm.
So again, yeah, I think we can do a lot more in public education, engagement with ODF and W about our challenges.
I need to
I
find.
guess as your team probably doesn't have interaction with ODF and W specific to this.
No, I was looking for doing some research on that. What is their policy on elk down in the Willamette Valley? Do they have one? What is their objectives, management objectives, and are they meeting those? And then who do I talk to about that? I need to find that out. If we were dealing with defined crossing locations that didn't move, I might have some cost-effective solution. But from what I'm understanding is it moves from week to week, and I haven't got a good handle on that yet, is how much are these locations moving?
Yeah, well, my confidence runs high since I see them. I mean, you could see the crossings on our roads daily. And they are all over the place. There is no defined migratory path for
Right.
these animals. They have essentially taken over the entire bottom of the valley, and at least to the river. And they cross all kinds of roads, and they
Yeah,
do it in different places every time.
Yeah, if they've got 20 different crossings that they're not using each one every day, but they're using the same 20 all through the year, then that's something we can also deal with. But if it's completely random, then it's pretty hard for us to address that.
A friend of mine is a project manager at Oregon Solutions, and he worked on a project in Clatsop. He formed this stakeholder kind of consortium or collaborative, and done a lot of work there. So I don't know if we've risen to the point where we really need to dive in, but not at that level, obviously, but probably something we ought to.
Well, I can tell you, I mean, again, I've been working on this for years. I can tell you that Farm Bureau members, individual farmers in this county have been meeting with ODF and W, have been pleading for help. Because again, the economic damages are significant, not just what they do to the ground. Again, our own ground, right? In my family, our ground is just being pummeled by these animals. But we have crops like hazelnuts that are just being obliterated out there.
Yeah.
The bulls love to go into those young trees and sharpen their antlers.
Yeah.
And they just destroy those trees.
I
So
heard that they've run out of trees and they're starting to use power poles now. If you drive up and down Early Road, you can see where the bulls have been rubbing on the power poles.
I mean, 20 years ago, this wasn't an issue. We didn't have these herds here, not like this. It was a rare occasion to see a couple of elk, especially bulls. The last group I had on my place a month and a half ago, I think just estimating that there was a third of those animals, full antlered bulls, not just little spikes, big ranch antlered bulls. So I concur with it's okay if we got a process to get cow tags for depredation, but we're seeing to have a pretty healthy bull population as well. And there's too many. There's just too many of them. So maybe they're waiting for the cougars to catch up with them. I don't know. I mean, that's happening as well.
I just think when we go and do this, now let's take it as a natural thing. So let's introduce the wolves back in the area and bring in the cougars, take away the hunting. I can just see
I
that.
hope he means tongue in cheek with that.
Absolutely.
Just for the record.
Introduce legions of mountain lions.
Well, we have those, I think, already.
I know. We have some.
They're-
Eliminate the dog hunting, cougars are everywhere.
The thing is, the elk have figured out now that they're well enough protected. They can get into all the feed that they can stand. Their birth rates have exploded. And, that's where we're at. All agriculture is feeding them now. That just didn't used to happen. So something policy-wise dynamically has changed to allow these herds to explode.
I have a picture of a herd in Kennels Farms field. And I brought it back to the office and blew it up. And I counted, I think it was 297 in one herd.
We have a lot of enthusiasts and spectators too,
Mhm.
flock around the flock,
Right.
herds.
Oh, there they are. Stop and look.
Yeah.
Kabam. So I'm hearing a consensus that we don't want to go with signage.
I don't see the value in
I
it.
mean, I can go one sign on each road entering into the area.
That'd probably be fine.
I honestly believe,
I'd rather see,
people become oblivious to them. Remember the Applegate Trail signs?
Well, and that's what happens.
I think that a
That's why they don't
campaign
work.
for educating people on our own with help from our media specialists to keep doing this. I mean, again, there should be stories with some photos of these impacts with cars. So my guess is, Dave, you don't have any of those photos. And you encourage the office down the hall to get us some of that as well. I mean, that makes a difference. People respond to that. So, geez, I didn't know an elk could do that.
with a description of the overall issue rather than real place specific. It's like putting up deer signs. It's like there are deer everywhere. I know.
Yeah.
It's good. It's a good reminder, but unless you see the impact.
Yeah, I mean, they're working on some advancements, you know, in this science, if you will. But they're a little bit different. They're generally dedicated towards routine crossings at this location. And so in some of the highway projects, they've developed these under crossings for animals to move through. In some other places, they've put up infrared detection and then flashing lights that come on when they detect animals about to cross. But these are in areas where they're able to funnel that crossing to the same location each time. And we don't have that situation here. So what reason I asked if they're using 20 different crossings, but at different times, there's some low tech stuff that we could do at each one of those with putting some reflectivity things in there and stuff so that if an animal crosses, it looks like a blinking light at you. But
Is that easily transferable to other locations as they
yeah,
change their
I mean,
mandatory app?
imagine a set of cones. You put a set of cones on each side of the crossing, on each side of the road. When the animals walk across and you're driving at it, that cone looks like a light that's flashing at you. You can see as the legs or the bodies go in front of it. But I got to be able to predict that they're going to use that. And if they go, nah, we used that last night. We're 10 feet down the road tonight.
Exactly. You're chasing
It's
it.
doing no good.
Something worth exploring for sure.
Yeah. I mean, having delineators on our fog lines, you know, reflective delineators on our fog lines would help. I mean, that improved, you know, nighttime and wet weather retroreflectivity on our fog lines would be great. But, you know, MUTCD doesn't allow me actually to put a raised reflector on a fog line. Only on the center line can you put that. But, you know, improved retroreflectivity of our striping is probably the best that we can do. So we'll look into that.
I'm all for that
Okay.
Sure.
for various reasons.
Great discussions. Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Appreciate it. All right. Do we have any unlisted items or anything for the good of the order? I could just briefly express a little gratitude. I completed my first calendar year of being a commissioner, and if somebody would have told me 4 years ago that I'd be a full county commissioner, much less chair a meeting, I'd raise my eyebrows as I go. I just really, really appreciate this experience and I'm very grateful for it. When I first started, the weight of the responsibility was very heavy. I was constantly hearing, "Are you up for this? Can you do that?" But thanks to the support of the staff and my fellow commissioners, I feel okay. I feel like I belong, and I'm really looking forward to growing in this position and continuing that. And I think the culture here has been well established, and in my letter of interest to occupy this, to be appointed, I said I think this would be a great place to work, and my expectations have been met, and that's a great place to work. It's a culture where we promote talent and promote collaboration, and there's a lot of discussion on issues, important issues. It's a healthy culture, and I've worked in other cultures that have done it. So I really appreciate that. And thank you for your guidance, fellow commissioners. We don't have official mentorship relationships, but I consider it that. I'm always thinking in that way. So I just really appreciate it. Appreciate the opportunity. All right, we're adjourned.